What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another live stream. This is my third night in a row of doing this editing your photos, except no one sent any photos yet, so I've just been editing my photos. So tonight I just wanted to do a couple more shots from 2020, a couple of my favorite shots from 2020. So I'm gonna get right into it. If you are joining for the first time, be sure to say hello in the chat here on YouTube. Love to hear from you. And oh, sorry if that was kind of loud. Ooh, actually, if this whole thing was way too loud, my apologies. That should be better. All right. So yeah, email right here, jordaneditsyourphotos@gmail.com. Send your photos there, raw format preferred. And I will edit those in the next live stream. So go ahead, send those off there, or as soon as this live stream's over, at least, go do that. And let's get into some edits, shall we? So here we go in Lightroom today. And I'm going to be doing these three photos right here. So I am going to start with the cocktails. So this was back when I was starting the Homebar Pro YouTube channel. Go check that out if you are interested in cocktails and haven't seen it already. But basically, I was getting some shots for the banner on that page, and just shooting some recipe videos. So that is one of the shots from there. We've got 5 different cocktails, a bunch of different colors. If you saw last night's stream, I did just the the Collins cocktail, the one all the way on your left, but this is going to be all 5, so we've got a little bit different colorization that's going to happen just because we've got not just one color. So first of all, I'm going to make sure we've got a nice even exposure. I'm going to just bump it up just a little bit, kind of brighten that up, and then dial up the contrast a little bit. Highlights are a little crazy to me. I like to sort of see the ice cubes through there, so that is why I brought the highlights, I guess, all the way down. I'm probably going to bring the whites down a little bit too. And shadows, I don't know, what do you think? I like what it does to the Negroni, but the rest of the drinks I kind of like better the shadows down. So I'm actually going to bring those down, and then we'll worry about the Negroni kind of brightening up that with the brush tool in a little bit. All right, temperature wise, I think it's pretty spot on, but I'm just going to see what Lightroom suggests. If I pick a neutral color like the table, it kind of makes it go a little greener, a little redder, depending on where you click. But for the most part, it's kind of spot on. Might warm them up just a tiny bit. Something like that. All right, and then the tint is just a little green to my eyes, so I think something like that is going to be just about perfect. I'm just going to go to the chat quick. We've got a couple people watching. Say hello in the chat. I'd love to know who's here. YouTube doesn't really tell me who's watching unless you chat, so say hello. All right. Next, before we go into the colors, I actually do want to crop this a little bit. I don't like this bottom edge of the table, and actually gonna disable the aspect ratio lock because I don't really want to crop in on the sides so much. I might crop in a little bit over here just to sort of get everything centered, and then I'm gonna bring this down right to about there, right? So that upper third line is kind of right where the wash lines are on those center cocktails. All right, boom. So it's like a very wide screen, kind of cinematic looking shot. I like the way that crop looks a lot better. All right, so colors. Gonna come down to red and let's see, boost the luminance on that a little bit. So that's gonna kind of fix those issues I was having earlier, where I was going to adjust it with the shadows. I still might do a little bit in that regard, but just boost the luminance on the red, kind of brighten that up to make it more in line with everything else. And then let's see. I might also adjust the, let's see, saturation, the yellow a little bit, just to brighten those up. Ooh, kind of like what that does. It's almost overdone, but it brings a little bit on the side there. Kind of like that. The yellow on this lemon, trying to do it without it making it look like radioactive. So just really quick, it's like before, after. So now I've actually muted what I was originally going for. I'm just going to boost it and maybe deal with that lemon wheel later on. Or maybe I'll forget about it and think it looks fine. Luminance, don't really want to do that. That looks crazy. And color grading, I think, is fine. I want this, since it's sort of like a product shot, I don't really want to bring in anything kind of crazy with like looks or anything like that. So I'm going to leave it fairly neutral and not really touch that. I'm going to mess with the texture a little bit just to get those little bubbles and the ice cubes really popping there. And then clarity, just a tiny bit. Clarity can get overdone super easy. Dehaze, you know, I actually kind of like that's doing a little bit. So I'm just going to do a little bit of dehaze, just a little bit, and then the grain. I'm going to give it some grain, kind of add to that cinematic quality. Kind of want this to be like a, I don't know, it feels vintage, getting vintage vibes. So I'm going to put a little grain on there. Not that you'll see it when it's compressed and put on Instagram anyway, but that's all right. That's kind of the main place we're sharing photos these days, right? Like where else are we sharing them? Remember Flickr? I think that's still around, but all right. I'm going to come over to my brush tool and I am going to paint the red portion of the Negroni on the right. You probably can't see what's happening right now, but as soon as I bump up the exposure, that's going to lighten up a little bit. And then I'm also going to increase the shadows just to brighten that up. Now I'm also going to use my brush tool and create a new one. I'm going to come over here with this lemon wheel. Make sure I get all the peel. If you hover over that little pin right there, it sort of shows you what has been colored in a red color. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to bring down the overall saturation on that lemon, something like that. And I might even reduce the contrast a little bit. It's just a little too, like, I don't know, in your face. All right, I think that looks pretty good. I don't think there's anything else I would change. And, you know, just to sort of recap here, do it before and after. You know, no crazy changes, just really sort of making those colors pop, bringing back some detail that's in the ice, and making everything just look vibrant and delicious. All right. Any questions so far? If you're kind of new to Lightroom and don't know where everything is, it might be going a little fast for you, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. So please make sure you ask them in the chat, or if you're watching this not live, ask them in the comments, and then I'll be sure to answer those for you. All right, so let's see here. How's my how are my levels, by the way? How's my audio sound? It's sound good? Not too loud? Not like in the beginning? I'm using a different mic today. I usually use the Rode NT-USB like mic. It's like a desktop mic. I guess I could show you. I don't know. It's kind of connected to stuff. Kind of looks like that. Okay. You know, something you would expect someone to use for a podcast or something, but I don't know. I found that it just picks up way too much background noise, and I have my computer, when I'm using Lightroom and OBS and everything all at once, just, you can hear it probably even on this thing, or if not, I'll just lean closer, but there's noise from the fan, and the Rode mic was just picking up a lot of that, and my ears, this like cheap little lapel sounded better. All right, you probably don't care about any of that though, so let's get back to the edits. So next photo, I'm gonna do this picture hiking on the Point Reyes National Seashore. This was last January, I believe. And there's Jamie sitting there on the cliff. So let's get into this edit. I'm actually gonna adjust like crop before I do anything else. I'm gonna use auto, see how good, yeah, that did a pretty good job. Had a nice horizon here to work from, so that worked out. And then I'm gonna bring this down a little bit. For me, most of what's interesting is Jamie and the water and the cliffside, and a little too much sky before. So I'm just gonna bring that down just a little bit like that. All right, so exposure on this, it seems maybe a touch underexposed in the grasses, but you know, I don't want to blow out the green shirt on Jamie there, so I'm going to make sure that's not blown out. Pro tip, if you're new to Lightroom, or maybe if you've used Lightroom for years but just don't know this, if you hold down the Alt or Option key while you're moving any of the sliders, you get this sort of reduced output where you can sort of cleanly see if you're over or under exposing. All right, and then contrast, to me, this actually feels a little too contrasty. When you're on the Point Reyes, or in the Point Reyes area, everything is very like misty and hazy, and a lot of times you don't want the haze. You know, Lightroom even has a dehaze slider, you can do that to it, but I like to sort of accentuate it when I'm in areas that actually have haze that you experience when you're there, because I'm always trying to convey what I experienced in real life in the photo. Sometimes, you know, being hyper realistic about it is okay if it helps tell that story better. I'm going to go back up to the light panel here. So I've got exposure and contrast set. For my highlights, I still feel like Jamie's shirt's a little blown out, so I'm just, even though it's not according to this, I'm going to bring those down quite a bit. Shadows, I'm going to bring down just to keep some contrast in there. Then the whites, I'm going to reduce. I don't really want it like super like underexposed, but something like that. And then the blacks, I always kind of want to make sure you have at least something that's 100% black, technically. Same with white, you kind of want something that's 100% white, but we can break the rules, right? I'm actually going to lift the blacks because I don't like the way in the bottom sort of third of this photo, the dark shadows in the grass and the weeds. I don't like the way that looks, so I'm going to lift the blacks just a little bit like that. So already we're kind of looking at like a very sort of flat style compared to what came out of the camera. This is the before, after, so we're a lot brighter, but we're also a lot less contrasty. But I kind of like the direction this is going. I am going to warm this up. The sun coming out to the left there on the west, setting in probably about 1 to 2 hours when this is taken. So I'm going to sort of play up the golden hour look there by warming it up just a little bit. I think my tint is pretty spot on. You know, colors come out of Canon cameras pretty good, like the auto white balance. But I might just give it just like a little bit more red or something like that. Let's see. Before, after. Looks pretty natural to my eyes. Vibrance. You know, I might play with this a little bit. Maybe bring down the saturation. Bring down the saturation, bring up the vibrance. Vibrance sort of focuses on like greens and blues, where saturation does everything. I realize this photo is just greens and blues, but vibrance, by turning down the saturation and turning up the vibrance, allows you to sort of like add it with a fine touch. Not going to overdo it. And I sort of, kind of going with this whole washed out sort of misty hazy thing that I've been doing so far. I'm going to keep keep along with that theme and just kind of go a little less saturation. I'm gonna check in here on the live stream. Hey, that's Jamie. Jamie in the chat. That's my wife. She's in the photo. You know, anyone else in the chat, please say hello. I'd love to hear from you if you're just joining in. So far in the edit here, we've kind of adjusted the lighting and the overall color, trying to give it sort of that like misty, hazy, coastal vibe. And if we really want to fine tune that stuff, we can do that down here in the color mixer. And I think that the I'm gonna play with the hue of the green and the grass just a little bit, kind of bring in some more of those reddish earth tones and less of the actual like true green. And I can adjust this kind of in the other direction, you know, make it look as natural as possible. And the water right now, because I adjusted the grass more brown, it's looking a little teal to me. So I'm going to adjust that a little bit more blue, like that. And then I'm also going to turn down the luminance of the grass just to, not so much that it looks crazy and fake, but like just to draw our eye more towards the water and Jamie and less on the grass, like that. So something like that, trying to, like I said, trying to keep it natural looking. All right. So to remind you, that's what it looked like when we brought it in from the camera. This is what it looks like now. I think I may have gone a little too far on some of these hue adjustments. No, I don't want Jamie's shirt being crazy either. Something like that. All right, let's see. Before, after. There. That looks a lot better, I think. What do you think? Let me know in the chat or in the comments down below if you're watching this on the replay when it's not live. Let's see. I'm gonna zoom in. Yeah, I think I like the way the water looks. It's a little artifacty, but hey, kind of like it. So this image, I'm going to play around with the grading a little bit, kind of creating a look, something I didn't do on that last shot. If you've been watching since the beginning, the product shot I did with the cocktails, I didn't want to sort of color this in any way. I didn't want to give it a look. I wanted it, I mean, gave it a look, but not like a, I don't know. I wanted to keep it very neutral since we're really focusing on the colors of the cocktails and the glasses, kind of wanting them to be a true representation. But over here, what's going on? For some reason, everything reset on me. What did I do? Huh? Does anyone know this? I swear this. I'm trying to use the new Lightroom because I do like the cloud features because I don't have to worry about backup as much. But some things are a little buggy. Like, why is this? Where did all my edits go? You know? All right, well, I'm sort of, do I really want to do this over again? I guess. So I'm going to basically start over. So let's see if I can repeat the steps I just took. Brighten it up, reduce the contrast, bring down the highlights, bring down the whites, bring up down the shadows a little bit, bring up the blacks, warm it up, bring down the saturation, bring up the vibrance. And then I messed with the sort of hue of the background. This is another thing. You can't see my arrow, but I'm clicking and moving the slider and it's just not moving. And I don't know what the deal is. Okay. Like it might not even be a Lightroom. See, no, it just like, I don't know if you can hear me clicking. Like this is not, there we go. I don't know if this is like a Big Sur, like a macOS Big Sur issue, or if this is the Lightroom issue. All right. Anyway, I think that was roughly where I was. So in the shadows, I am going to, I feel like I want to do sort of like a vintagey thing, keeping it warm. I might even do like that, but like dial that way back, but just like a little touch of orange in the midtones there, and then my shadows to kind of counteract that, or even to sort of reinforce it. I might go red. I know that's like not usually what you do, and then introduce maybe some color contrast in the highlights. Some blues like that. Just like a tiny bit. Kind of like that, just bringing down the luminance on the highlights. Oh, something else I forgot. I did, I straightened it and cropped it a little before too, so that's another thing I can do. All right. What we can do is come down here, play with the blending. It kind of dials like the percentage of how much these are affecting it, and then also the balance is going to go, you know, which side of the tint curve, I believe. Cool, I can go warm, somewhere in between. I'm going to leave those where they were. Texture here, I don't think I'm going to touch because I don't really want to highlight the grass. The clarities, it's kind of the same thing. I might just give it a little bit of clarity. The dehaze, again, like I said, I'm kind of accentuating, or I want to accentuate the haze on this, so I'm not going to do that. If anything, I would go the opposite direction, even just a little bit like that. And the vignette, don't like that. Grain, I'm going to add quite a bit of grain because this just feels sort of vintage vibes to me. Vintage vibes all over today. And last thing I'm going to do is bring down the exposure and increase the saturation in the sky. So when I brought down the overall saturation, increased the vibrance just a little bit earlier, you really lost all the color from the sky. So I'm going to bring that back like that, and then my exposure, you know, I don't want to go crazy because that's a little surreal looking, but I don't know, I kind of like that. I'll lower the contrast on that just to kind of bring back in that sort of hazy look. And then highlights, just to get rid of that gray on the top. I don't like that like artificially like gradient darkness. Ooh, you know, if you dehaze, anti-dehaze the sky, it sort of adds this like layer of fog, which I think helps my case a little bit. So I'm gonna leave that. And you know what? That might just be just about perfect. I'm gonna pop a little radial gradient on Jamie. I don't even know if you can see this tool that I'm using, but just basically drawing an ellipse around Jamie, and then I'm gonna bump up the exposure. Maybe not the exposure. Shadows? I don't want it to look crazy, but that looks about right. Maybe I'll bring down the highlights. See, I'm clicking, I don't know about this new Adobe Lightroom. Might have to go back to Classic for these live streams because for certain things I love it. It's faster. It backs up everything to the cloud, but on the other hand, you know, UI bugs that just are slowing me down, especially if I'm not like looking at the UI. I'm looking at the photo and you on the live stream. I feel like this live stream's been a lot of me complaining tonight. Does anyone else feel that way? Who's watching right now? Let me know in the chat. Okay, I think I'm done with this photo. Let's see, before, after, before, after. I think that's, I like that. It's a little different than I normally do on style-wise, but I think it really fits the location, you know, coastal Northern California, Point Reyes. All right, one last photo tonight. This is the, taken in the same place actually, but looking the other direction, a little bit closer to sunset. I believe these are cypress trees, a little cypress grove. And if you look closely, you've got the moon there, peeking over the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into this edit. I think the crop is good. I'm not gonna touch that. I'm just gonna go right into color right away. These are some different like interpretations of color over here on the side, like Adobe Color, Adobe Landscape. Kind of scroll through those and kind of get a base from where to start. I kind of like this Adobe Landscape. I like the redness of the trees because, I mean, the sun that low in the horizon does almost have this like red color. So I'm going to start from there. And let's see, I like the exposure. If you bring it up, that's just like not, I mean, I guess this is probably more how it looked when I was there, but I like the sort of moody underexposedness. I think maybe I'll just bring down the contrast just a little bit, bring up the shadows just to bring some more detail in the leaves and the grass in the foreground. But before I forget, I'm going to draw a little, that's another thing. Why would it do that? Let's draw a little gradient up from the bottom and drop the exposure on that, and actually bring that all the way up. Drop the exposure, drop the shadows, increase the contrast. I just don't need a lot of attention drawn to the ground. Like this picture to me is about the trees and the moon. All right, so my white point, I don't, you know, not going to touch that. Not going to touch my blacks. You know, I could go for like that sort of washed out look, but I'm not going to. I think that looks good. My white balance, I could go even warmer. Definitely don't want to go cooler. Maybe something like that. I don't want to go crazy because I don't want to lose the blue of the sky. That could kind of be fun, but I think I'm just going to reset that. I'm going to reset both of those. Vibrance. I do like a little bit of vibrance on here. I think my colors are pretty much where I want them. You know, I might play with the sky just a tiny bit, bringing it Luminance down or up? Up just a little bit. Might be fun. And then I'm just gonna saturate the sky a little bit more, bring back some of those blues, and then I think the blue is right where I want it. Yeah, I mean, that looks completely weird. I think that looks good, and then I've noticed there's another sort of sky color down here. I'm gonna adjust. I don't know. I think I'll leave that where it was. All right, so I think overall that's kind of, you know, what I was going for. I could go like very nighttimey and like throw some blue in the shadow like that, but I don't think that's really, it's not at all how it looked when it was there. Highlights. Sometimes I just like to come through, try out some of these settings and see if, you know, just to, even if I don't have like a specific goal, just to like play with the tools and see if there's anything that inspires me about it. I mean, this like midtones in the oranges, like I sort of like the way the sky is reacting here, where I've still got blue up top, but then I've got this golden thing. Maybe I'll just dial that back a bunch like that, and maybe I'll come back to the sky. Make sure that's nice and blue and saturated like that. All right, so I think that's about where I want it. So before, after, you know, didn't do a ton here, warmed up the trees a little bit, brought out some details in the shadows in the trees, got rid of some details in the shadows on the ground, the foreground. But now I'm going to do a little bonus for you guys. Before I do that, come back to the chat just to see if anyone is here hanging out with me. As a reminder, at this point, please like this video. Helps out a lot. Leave a comment if you enjoyed it, learned anything, if you have any questions. And I've been doing these every night for the last couple of nights, so I don't see why I'm gonna stop. I mean, they're kind of fun for me. But what I really wanted to do when I started this was to, you know, take some of your photos and edit those, because I think it's fun to take, you know, kind of see what another photographer would do with your photo, and vice versa. Because a lot of the personality of the photo comes in the edit, in my opinion. Especially if you're doing like color grading and stuff like I have been. All right. But if you want to see your photo on here being edited live, like tomorrow night or the next night, email it to this email right here, Jordan, wait, where is it? jordaneditsyourphotos @gmail.com. And then you'll get to see one of your photos getting edited. That's always fun. All right, so let's get back into Lightroom. And then, so this is kind of the bonus I was talking about. So I'm actually going to edit this in Photoshop. How do we do? Oh, edit in Photoshop. Okay. Just make sure it all works the same way it did in the Lightroom Classic. So a little bonus here. And, you know, if you don't have Photoshop, I understand, except I don't know who has Lightroom and doesn't have Photoshop, because like me, I don't have the full Adobe plan. I just have the photo plan, like the photographer plan, which is just Lightroom and Photoshop. So pretty sure everyone that has Lightroom would have Photoshop. So that said, Photoshop is much more complex than Lightroom, and you may have kind of figured out Lightroom, but not really figured out like the Photoshop world yet. So, so if you don't understand everything I'm doing here, I, you know, completely understand. Sorry, I'm just messing with my lighting a little bit. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make the moon bigger. Might be cheating, but I like the moon. I like the framing of the moon. I like how it's like kind of centered there. So I really want to sort of blow that up a little bit. And to do so, I'm going to come in here and basically just like copy and paste this. So I'm going to use just a simple marquee like that, and Command C to copy, and then I'm going to create a new layer, Command V to paste, and Command T to open up free transform, and then I'm just going to drag these corners. I don't want to go too much because you can see it's already getting pretty pixelated, but something to note, like older versions of Photoshop, you actually had to hold down Command or Shift for these to resize proportionately, but in more recent versions, that's the default. And then you hold down the modifiers if you want to get weird. All right, let's see how that looks. All right, a little too big. So I'm gonna shrink that back down, maybe something like that. Let's see, so the original moon was about there. If you're ever trying to like get some in the same sort of area, you need to see down the layer below it, you can always turn down the opacity and do it that way. So I think that at that size is like almost believable, like especially different times of the year when the moon's sort of lower in the horizon and it appears quite large. I think that that is like probably as big as you could ever believe that it might be. So last thing we have to do, like, I mean, for Instagram, like I could honestly just probably export it like that and no one will ever know, but I don't like that there's this box around it. So I'm going to come in and use the healing brush, and I'm just sort of going to paint. Well, that's not what I wanted to do. Hold on. What do we have to do? We have to sample all layers. There we go. So I'm just coming through and I'm just trying to take off some of these sharp edges that, you know, using the square marquee tool. And now I probably could have saved myself a step if I used a different method to select the moon and copy and paste it to enlarge it, rather than just using the rectangle marquee like I did, but I was trying to be quick. It was kind of funny, as someone that learned Photoshop like over a decade ago, so many of the tools we have now are like AI and stuff like that that I didn't really learn originally, and it's taking me some time to sort of warm up to them and remember that they exist in the first place. If you're wondering what I'm doing, this is just like the patch tool, trying to just like hard edge that I want to go away. Maybe this needs to have source, destination. I think this is kind of good. It's not perfect. How do I make it perfect? Healing brush. This is where you sample and then you paint. But again, we have to do current and below layer so we can get that blue. There we go. This is what I was looking for all along. See, again, newer tools, not always as helpful as they think they are. Okay, that, I mean, that's just about as good as you're going to get. So that is how that looks now. And if you looked at it on like a phone, it would be that big and you would have no idea that it was just copy and pasted. However, it's like from the actual photo, like that was there in space and time. It just wasn't in dimension, or I don't know what I'm trying to say. All right, so I think all we do is, let's see, do we save it? Because it just said close the image. All right, that's fine. Quit Photoshop. Come back to Lightroom. Did it work? Boom, there we go. So we've got original and the after. How do we see? Forgive me, guys. Bear with me. How do we see ungroup stack? Okay, there we go. Before, after. Before, after. Before, after. All right, guys, I think that's it for tonight. I've already gone on for longer than I planned. We're at 43 minutes. This is the longest live stream yet. All right, I'm going to come back to my video window here. All right, well, for all of you who joined and watched live, you know, that's awesome. I'm trying to build this audience here. I've gotten like 6 playbacks, but only like 1 at a time. So I'd like to see that be at least 10 by the end of the month. So if you know anyone that is into photography or anything like that, into whatever, send them this channel. Tell them to subscribe, because I'm going to be doing these like almost every night. And again, you know, editing my photos is fine. Although I haven't really gotten out and taken new photos in a while, so these are like from 2020. But if you send your photo to this email right here, the jordaneditsyourphotos@gmail.com, I will edit yours next on the show, next live stream tomorrow night, or whenever you send them to me in the future. So be sure and do that. And if you're watching this in the replay, go ahead and go like this and hit subscribe if you're not already, because I'm doing these a lot. And I don't really know what this channel is now. Like, I've had so many different ideas over the last 13 years that I've been here on YouTube, and I'm just trying things out, just experimenting. So this is one of those experiments, live stream editing your photos. But you know, I'm going to be talking about probably some like personal finance stuff in the future, just because that's like super in vogue right now. And I don't know, let me know in the comments what you want to see. But until I figure that out, I'm just going to keep experimenting, and you're going to see a bunch of new ideas here. See what sticks. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.